Welcome back to class. This is the 6th lesson of the 4th module on the product owner training. And in this lesson, we're looking at requirement gathering. It's going to be a short lesson. In the last lesson, we started on the stakeholders, the product owner and the stakeholders. So here we'll look at requirements gathering. As I mentioned, it would be a short lesson. Let's go. So, what then is requirement gathering? As it sounds, gathering requirements. When we gather requirements, that's requirement gathering. Of course, we mentioned requirement gathering a couple of times, and that is one of the roles of the product owner. And the product owner does that with engagements with the stakeholders. The product owner is representing the stakeholders, so the product owner understands or needs to know what the stakeholders want, and the stakeholder would, in different ways, get across the requirement to the product owner. So requirement gathering as a product owner is a crucial activity that involves understanding, capturing, and prioritizing the needs and expectations of the stakeholders. So what are the key words here? Understanding, capturing, and prioritizing the needs and expectations of the stakeholders, to define the features and functionality of a product. So we can see the product owner defining the features and understanding and functionalities of a product. So that is telling us that the stakeholders could just be any of those identified stakeholders without the technical need, but the product owner takes the requirement and break it further into features and functionalities, still from the stakeholders' perspective. So those features and functionalities need necessarily not be technicals. If it's for software development, it needs not be coding and all those stuff. Right? This process ensures that the product being developed aligns with the user needs, business goals, and market demands. The product owner is conscious of the user needs, the business goals, and the market demands. So part of the business goals and market demands would also be the competitors, what the user needs, talking about what the users want, and all the rest. Okay, let's go further. And in this next slide, we would then see, what do you do after gathering requirements? There is a stopgap between the last slide and this, which I would want you to find out how the product owner gathers those requirements. It could be through questionnaires, through surveys, through brainstorm sessions, through different forms. So it's important you know them. So what do you do after gathering these requirements? Number one, identify stakeholders and define user persona. Persona is one of the lessons we would see in a couple of classes. So you need to identify your stakeholders and define your user persona. You have gathered the requirements. What are the other stakeholders in developing that particular product? And of course, who are the personas? Personas talk about the demography, the user understanding. Are they young people? Are they old people? Are they a particular region? Are they people of a particular belief? Are they different things you need to consider? Then you conduct your user interviews and surveys. You analyze user feedback. You collaborate with development team and prioritize requirements. That's taking it further. You write your user stories. We know that already. You iterate and validate. Iteration, that is the sprint itself. When you begin to commence on the development, then you engage in sprint planning and communicate and also document. You review and refine. Then of course you need to be available for clarification. We've done most of this from module 1, the roles of the product owner. You'll be available for the development team members when they need you. You'll be available for the stakeholders when they need you, ensuring clarifications and feedbacks, collaborative ways of working. Then of course continuous learning, and of course you gather more feedbacks from the stakeholders and users. As you are developing, they are testing, they are using, they are putting the product to test. You gather more feedbacks that would be required to push further on it. So those are some of those things you have to do when you gather requirements from the stakeholders. You interpret them and work further on them. We are careful not to take this class beyond the scope of this training. There are some other things you should be looking forward to. Some of this we would look at during the practicals, how we can expand on some of these points mentioned here when you begin to roll as a product owner in your practical sessions. So basically that will be all for this class. As mentioned earlier, that it will be a short class. We'll see again in another short class in the next lesson. If you have any questions, please note them down and send them over to me. I'll be glad for us to expand on any of these. That will be all for now. See you soon.